In case you missed it, here's a Sports Animal Rewind.
Why don't we talk some recruiting? We bring in 24/7 sports recruiting analyst Barton Simmons. You can follow him on Twitter. It's at Barton Simmons. Barton joins us now on the show. Barton, Vince, and Evan here in Knoxville. How you doing, Barton?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
We're good. It's a busy day today. Let's go through, before we talk about, obviously, Devontae Lambert and Chris Weatherd, why don't we go one by one on the guys that have signed with Tennessee, and just give me your thoughts here on National Junior College Signing Day. Let's start with wide receiver Von Pearson. What's your thoughts on this kid, one of the higher-rated JUCOs out there overall?
Yeah, he is. He is, in my opinion, one of the real impact JUCO wide receivers out there. We've got him as the number 2 junior college wide receiver in the country at 24/7 Sports. And, I think with him you're getting a kid that has got, enough size. He's around 6'1", he's 180 pounds. He's a fluid, up-the-field type of receiver. When getting him on board, you're getting the guy that I think you hope steps in and starts. I mean, you got Marquez North on one side. I think you hope that you get LaVon Pearson on the other, and then throw Josh Malone in there. I mean, that's some guys that can step in there and right away really add some competition to that wide receiving core. I think it's probably, probably my favorite of the group of JUCOs that Tennessee's got signed today.
Another guy is Dontavius Blair, a 4-star offensive tackle from Garden City Community College. Tall guy, obviously a tackle. What do you think of Dontavius Blair?
Yeah, I mean, 6'8", he's 300+ pounds. So he's got that SEC size and physicality. I think he can step in. Obviously, there's going to be some opportunity there on the offensive line to compete early on. He's got. You want guys like him to step in to have the physical tools to do it, and I think he's got the SEC body right now. So I think that's the key with Dontavius. Is he going to be able to step in there and compete right away and compete for that starting job right away? I think he can, but I think we're not going to really know for sure until we see him some live bullets in spring practice. But definitely, talking about another guy that I think the Tennessee staff hopes can really get in there and dig in and fight for a starting job. I think Dontavius Blair is absolutely one of those guys. He's the number 6 junior college offensive tackle in the country on 24/7 Sports, and it's a really good year for the offensive tackle position in the JUCO ranks. So, we think really highly of him.
Barton, do you know if he projects, since he's so highly rated, as either a left tackle or a right tackle? I know some guys are sort of pigeonholed one or the other, and maybe they don't have the skill sets you might look for at a left tackle. Do you know if he might project for either one or just right?
I would expect him to be a right tackle. He's got that size. You can get behind him and really run right behind that big body to the right side of the line of scrimmage. He's not, I don't think, going to be the guy that has the feet for that left tackle position. He could prove me wrong, though, on that. I mean, again, just because he has those physical tools, I think it's going to be fun to see him compete in spring practice. But I would expect him to probably start out on the right side. And then, depending on how well he does, depending on what he looks like early on in his career over there, I wouldn't be surprised to see him move on the left side.
Joined by 24/7 sports recruiting analyst Barton Simmons here on the new Sentinel sports page. Vince Ferrara and Evan Woodbery talking about the 3 signings for Tennessee so far on National Junior College Signing Day. The third player is Owen Williams, a little less heralded and signee from junior college. Talk about Owen Williams, a former Texas Tech commit.
Yeah, I think that with Owen, you're definitely getting more of a guy that is going to step in there and give you some depth on the defensive front. Not the biggest kid in the world as far as just a space eater, but he's an athletic guy. Really can run well in space. He can. I think he's the type of kid that you're going to see slanting and moving and being really active there in the defensive front. We've got him as the number 15 junior college defensive tackle on 24/7 Sports. He's a top 100 JUCO kid, so definitely a kid that, as you mentioned, Texas Tech thought they had him in the fold at one point, and Tennessee came in and stole him like they've done for a few guys in this class. And I think he's a guy that is going to step in there and add depth. I think that's what you're looking for out of Owen Williams. And if you can get, some starting snaps out of him, I think that's a plus. And again, he's going to add some athleticism, I think, to that defensive front as well, which is always welcome there in the SEC.
And finally, of course, there's 3 that are in the fold for Tennessee, and then a 4th they're waiting on this afternoon, and Devontae Lambert, who I think is another top 10 JUCO guy in 24/7. But Auburn has come on very strong here, and I think a lot of people are kind of worried. Should they be worried? Do you think Auburn has a chance here, or do you think he will stay in the fold with Tennessee?
Well, I mean, sure. I think there's reason for a little bit of worry. I mean, at least there has been leading up to today, when the team is playing for a national championship. One of the hottest teams in the country has made a strong push, and that Auburn staff has proven that that's a staff that can really close strong and really make some steals down the home stretch. But I do think that you're going to see him announced for Tennessee this afternoon. It's always a little bit worrisome when a kid's making an announcement despite being committed. But I do think he's going to stick with the Vols. And again, that's another guy, outside of the Pearson commitment, to me, Lambert's the most important guy in this group, just because, he's got size and athleticism. He's got physicality. I mean, he's just sort of a complete package type of kid, that can step in there. And I really think he can, be a starter from day one, and I think that's the type of guy that Tennessee hopes will fight for that job, and so I think that's a big pickup if they're able to keep him on board. And I'd be slightly surprised, not shocked, but just a little bit surprised if he doesn't end up signing with Tennessee today.
Barton, another player that Auburn, as well as Texas A&M, have had the full court press on and trying to sway late, is Chris Weather, the linebacker from Texas. What level of concern should Tennessee fans have about Weather maybe looking elsewhere?
Well, I think that one maybe is one to worry about a little bit more. I think Weather is, he's anytime, and Tennessee's had this problem before. Getting a Texas kid committed and then losing him late to an in-state program. I think that Texas A&M in particular is a school to watch here. There's a few of our national experts at 24/7 Sports have predicted a flip. I think Coach Sumlin has really been working hard on him. They've done some good work there with some teammates. I just think it's a guy that has got a little bit more smoke than I think you'd be comfortable with right now for Tennessee. So that's a kid I think to keep your eye on. Certainly he's not a loss at this point, but I'd be a little bit nervous on that one. And he's another guy at 6'3" plus, 220 pounds. I mean, that's a guy you want on board because he's going to make you better, whether it's in special teams or whether it's on the defensive side of the ball. He is a guy that has plenty of ability to step on the field early on.
Barton Simmons, recruiting analyst, 24/7 Sports, joining us here on the new Sentinel Sports page, and Vince Ferrara along with Evan Woodbery. Were there any notable signings today in the SEC that have come through so far today?
Yeah, I think Florida's done a good job early on here, and that's the program that's obviously needed some good news. I think probably one of the early surprises of the day was when Drew Sarvery, who was a Texas Tech commit, ended up signing with Florida. He's a 6'6", 210-pound kid. Early enrollee guy. He actually started 10 games as a true freshman at Florida A&M. So that's not one maybe that's a big national name, but for a program that needs some help on offense, that was a kind of a surprise. It was a late offer there by Florida. They kind of snuck in the back door, and were able to land him. But yeah, I mean, it's been a Kareem Are as well. With his commitment to Florida State, that was big, and that was one Ole Miss was really after. I think that could see some dominoes fall with some other offensive linemen. I mentioned what a good year for offensive line it was in JUCO ranks this year. I think Florida was really thrilled to get Kareem Are on board, and could see Ole Miss going after a guy like Jordan Sims out of Alabama at this point now. So it should be really interesting the rest of the day just to see where the chips fall on the JUCO ranks, and certainly obviously around 3:00 we'll be checking in to see what Devontae Lambert ends up deciding.
Barton, real quick on Florida, let me follow up on that. They've had now with Tyler Murphy 7 players leave, all of those on offense, and they had the change in staff, especially with offensive coordinator Brent Pease. A lot of people have said, well, Florida, they're a mess now because, everyone's leaving the program. Do you see that impact in recruiting before this flip today, or what kind of impact is the Florida situation had with Will Muschamp coming back and then the changes on the staff?
Well, they need to get some stability over there. I think there's no doubt about that. And I think once Florida hires an offensive coordinator and gets a name in place, I really think that'll settle things down. And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the problem with Florida wasn't defense. It was offense. And so some of those guys that left, quite frankly, Florida has no problem seeing them leave. That's going to add more scholarship opportunities for some other players. They're going to be able to extend their class a little bit. I don't think that Florida, the coaches down there in Gainesville right now, are too concerned about the guys that are leaving town. And I think, frankly, with Brent Pease now gone and that offense sort of isn't as much on Will Muschamp anymore. With they can kind of place the blame a little bit. So I think it's really important though to hurry up, get an OC hired, get a guy that kids are going to relate to and recognize and find a name that inspires a little confidence. And once that happens, I think that it's still Florida. It's still a brand name program in the state of Florida, in the SEC, and I expect if that happens, Florida's still got a chance to close pretty strong on the recruiting trail.
Barton, just one other last thing on Tennessee. They're at 34 commitments right now. 3 guys are signed. Where do you think they sit with such a big number right now? How do you see this playing out down the stretch for Tennessee with this group and to get to National Signing Day? Will they lose guys? Will they find a way to make the 34 work? What do you think of the way it sits right now?
Yeah, it's interesting because I figured that they would have sort of locked it down at around 32, and they still seem to be chasing other guys at this point, so they don't seem ready to stop. But I do think when you look at their class, there's a couple of guys that I've sort of got my eye on as guys that could be potential non-qualifiers and may not sign, may not count towards that signing. I think you got to look at also guys like potentially maybe a Corey Thomas who's flirting with Mississippi State. He's a guy that mentioned to me last week when I was at the Alabama-Mississippi game that, he's got an eye on how big the class is as well and how many defensive linemen they're signing. And he's, concerned a little bit about depth and that sort of thing. So that's something to watch. Is a couple guys may fall by the wayside, and then a couple of these guys may get tagged with that gray shirt late in the process. So I think there's a lot of different ways they can go. Obviously, they're getting a lot of guys enrolled early, which is going to back count towards last year. They're going to gray shirt a couple. I think you may see 1 or 2 academic casualties, and you may see 1 or 2 decommitments, and that may make room for, we may see more commitments down the stretch from Tennessee. So it's been a fun year to follow this class if you're a Tennessee fan, just because there's so much movement, so many commits, and they're doing so well, to be frank.
Barton, who are those couple guys that you're looking at that could maybe not have the grades to get in?
Well, and I'm always a little bit hesitant to say these names publicly because you never know, they could get things on track. I think one guy that's just got to do a little work in the classroom is Gavin Bryant, and he is a really talented prospect. 4-star kid. But I think he's a guy that just, got to get a little bit more done in the classroom, and if he can get on campus, that would be huge. But if he doesn't, that's just sort of a name that, again, you sort of chalk up to casualty and hope you get him through the JUCO ranks. And then, other guys that could pop up late in the process, I wouldn't want to speculate on, but it is part of the game. It's part of the deal. And when you're recruiting at a high level, you're always going to get a couple of those type of guys. So I think Tennessee's, keeping that in mind and then keeping an eye on a couple of those possibilities.